I'm Samantha, 34 years old, and I always believed family came first. My grandmother Evelyn taught me that when she raised me in this beautiful Victorian house she later left to me. I've built my interior design business from the ground up, and today should have been a celebration of another successful year. Instead, as I unwrapped my family's special gift, I found myself staring at eviction papers for my own home. The shock on my face quickly faded into something else. They had no idea what I had waiting in my office safe. If you're watching this from somewhere your family has tried to take what's rightfully yours, drop a comment below and subscribe to see how I turn the tables on mine. Growing up, I was always closest to my grandmother Evelyn. My parents were constantly busy, Dad with his business ventures and Mom with her social obligations. Grandma Evelyn filled that void. She taught me to appreciate the beauty in details, which later inspired my career in interior design. We spent countless afternoons in her garden, restoring antique furniture in the garage, or baking in the kitchen of this magnificent house. The house itself is a century-old Victorian marvel with handcrafted moldings, stained glass windows, and a history that spans generations. It sits on a corner lot in one of the most desirable neighborhoods in town, surrounded by mature oak trees that Grandma Evelyn refused to cut down despite offers from developers. These trees have seen more history than any of us, she would say. They deserve our respect. 5 years ago, when Grandma Evelyn passed away peacefully in her sleep at 92, the reading of her will shock everyone. She left the entire property to me, with a letter explaining her decision. Samantha understands the soul of this house. She will honor its history while breathing new life into its walls. The inheritance included not just the house, but also a modest investment account to maintain the property. The family's reaction was immediate and cold. My father, Richard, a man perpetually chasing the next big business opportunity, couldn't hide his disappointment. He had counted on selling the property to cover his gambling debts that I only learned about later. At 65, he still carried himself with the confidence of someone who believed his next win was just around the corner, despite a lifetime of evidence to the contrary. My mother, Eleanor, always elegant and calculated, masked her anger with tight smiles. At 62, she had been planning to use the house sale to fund her increasingly lavish lifestyle and maintain appearances in her social circles. Her shopping addiction had grown worse over the years, and I discovered credit card statements showing debt in the high 5 figures. My older brother Brandon, 37, and his wife Rachel viewed the house as their salvation. Their chain of boutique fitness studios had collapsed during the economic downturn, leaving them with massive debt. They had been living in the pool house for what was supposed to be just a few months after losing their condo, but that had stretched to over a year. My younger sister Lily, 29, was perhaps the least antagonistic, but she had her own financial issues. Her art history degree from an expensive private college had left her with student loans she couldn't manage on her gallery assistant's salary. She had been counting on her share of grandmother's estate to wipe out that debt. I wasn't blind to their struggles. Despite their barely concealed resentment, I opened my home to them. Brandon and Rachel continued living in the pool house. I helped Lily with her student loan payments when I could. I even loaned Dad money for what he called investment opportunities that never seemed to materialize returns. My interior design business was finally taking off after years of hard work. I had secured contracts with several wealthy clients, renovating multi-million-dollar homes, and even a boutique hotel. The irony wasn't lost on me that as my career flourished, my family's financial situations seemed to worsen despite my help. The first sign of their betrayal came 3 months ago. I returned home early from a client meeting to find a realtor walking through my living room, measuring and taking photos. She quickly explained that the family had asked for a market evaluation. When confronted, my parents brushed it off as just exploring options. Brandon suggested I was being paranoid. Lily avoided the conversation entirely. I might have believed them if not for the papers I accidentally discovered in Brandon's laptop case a week later, printouts of real estate listings of condos and apartments they could afford after selling the family home. The listing clearly showed my house, with interior photos I hadn't authorized. The betrayal stung, but I decided to watch and wait rather than confront them immediately. I began noticing whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. Family members took calls outside, speaking in hushed tones. And then came the meeting I wasn't supposed to know about. All of them gathered at my father's golf club with a lawyer I didn't recognize, discussing what I would later discover was their plan to force me out of my own home. My birthday started like any other special day. I woke early, excited despite myself. No matter how old you get, birthdays still carry that childlike anticipation. I spent the morning preparing food for the family dinner, making my grandmother's famous lasagna recipe, preparing a salad with vegetables from her garden that I still maintained, and baking an extravagant chocolate cake. The dining room table was set with Grandma Evelyn's best china and crystal glasses that caught the afternoon sunlight. Fresh flowers from the garden decorated the center of the table, and family photos lined the mantelpiece, happy moments frozen in time that I desperately wanted to recapture. Around 5 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Mom and Dad arrived first, both dressed formally as if attending a business function rather than a family gathering. Mom carried a small gift bag while Dad held a thin envelope. Their smiles seemed rehearsed. "Happy birthday, darling," Mom said, air kissing near my cheek to avoid smudging her makeup. "The house looks lovely." Her eyes scanned the foyer, assessing as always. Dad gave me a stiff hug. "Another year wiser, huh? We have something special for you this year." His voice carried an undertone I couldn't quite identify. Brandon and Rachel arrived next with a bottle of champagne. "The birthday girl," Brandon announced too loudly. "Let's get this party started." Rachel hugged me tightly, whispering, "You deserve all the best today," with an emphasis that would later feel ominous. Lily arrived last, clutching a small wrapped package and looking uncomfortable. Her eyes were slightly red, and she avoided direct eye contact. "Happy birthday, Sam," she mumbled, giving me a quick hug before heading straight for the wine. Dinner progressed with unusual enthusiasm from my family. They complimented the food effusively, laughed at each other's jokes, and kept refilling my wine glass. The conversation stayed superficial. Brandon's stories about celebrity clients at his new personal training job, Mom's gossip about neighbors, Dad's golf games. No one asked about my design business or recent projects. After dinner, we moved to the living room for cake and presents. Lily went first, handing me her small package containing a vintage brooch. "It reminded me of the one Grandma used to wear," she said quietly. Brandon and Rachel gave me an expensive bottle of perfume I had mentioned liking once. Mom's gift was a silk scarf that was much more her style than mine. "And now for our special gift," Dad announced, holding up the envelope with a flourish. The whole family contributed to this one. The room fell silent as he handed it to me. The envelope felt light, containing just a single sheet of paper. As I opened it, I expected perhaps a gift certificate or tickets to a show. Instead, I found myself staring at a formal eviction notice, requiring me to vacate my own home within 30 days. My hands began to tremble as I read the legal language, citing a previously unknown clause in my grandmother's will that supposedly gave the family collective ownership in the event of financial hardship. "What is this?" I finally managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Dad cleared his throat. "We've been patient, Samantha, but the family needs this asset now. The house is worth over $2 million in today's market. Split between all of us, that solves everyone's problems. Your grandmother would have wanted to help the whole family," Mom added smoothly. "Not just you. We've found the original codicil to her will that she clearly intended to file. The house was meant to benefit everyone." Brandon leaned forward. "We've got a developer ready to buy as soon as you're out. They'll tear it down and build luxury condos." We all get an equal share. Equal except for me, you mean, I said, still staring at the document. You've had exclusive use of it for 5 years, Rachel pointed out. That's hardly nothing. And we're giving you 30 days, Dad added, as if being generous. The law only requires 14. I looked at each of their faces, seeing the greed poorly disguised as family concern. Only Lily couldn't meet my eyes, staring down at her hands. There's no legal basis for this, I said calmly, surprising myself. Grandma's will was crystal clear. Actually, there is, Dad replied smugly. Our lawyer found that without the proper maintenance records filed with the Historical Society every year, the inheritance terms are invalidated. And guess what? The last 3 years are missing. I felt a cold weight in my stomach. I had filed those records faithfully, but through my business email rather than the family account they still had access to. We need an answer now, Samantha, Mom said firmly. Will you leave gracefully, or do we need to make this difficult? The room waited in tense silence for my response. To their visible surprise, I carefully folded the eviction notice and placed it back in the envelope. I need a moment, I said, standing up. This is unexpected. Don't make a scene, Mom hissed. This decision is final. I walked out of the living room with measured steps, hearing their confused murmurs behind me. As soon as I was out of sight, I pulled out my phone and sent a simple text message to Benjamin. They did it. Plan B. 3 months earlier, the accidental discovery of the realtor in my home had been my first warning, but it was my neighbor Grace who provided the crucial information that set everything in motion. Grace, a retired legal secretary with a penchant for gardening and a clear view of my driveway from her kitchen window, stopped by one afternoon with a concerned expression. Samantha, I'm not one to meddle, she began, which usually meant exactly the opposite, but I thought you should know your family had a visitor yesterday while you were at that design convention. A man in a suit. They spent hours in your garden discussing the property lines and taking measurements. When I pressed for details, Grace revealed she'd overheard phrases like tear-down value and zoning requirements for multi-unit development. Most disturbing was hearing my father clearly state, Samantha doesn't need to know until it's all arranged. The next day, I called Benjamin Cohen, an attorney who had handled some contracts for my design business. He specialized in estate law and had actually worked with my grandmother on her will years earlier. They don't have a legal leg to stand on, Benjamin assured me after I explained the situation. Your grandmother's will was ironclad. But that doesn't mean they won't try something underhanded. People do crazy things when money is involved, especially family. Benjamin's advice was straightforward. Document everything. Record conversations if legal in your state. Keep all maintenance records and proof of improvements you've made to the property. And most importantly, don't confront them yet. Let them show their hand. Over the following weeks, I became a detective in my own home. I installed small security cameras in common areas after consulting with Benjamin about legality. I saved every text message and email from family members. I documented every unusual visitor and created a detailed timeline of events. The most disturbing discovery came when I overheard Brandon on the phone with someone discussing the old lady's mental state during her final year. They were planning to claim my grandmother had been mentally incompetent when she wrote her will, using her occasional forgetfulness as evidence of diminished capacity. We just need an expert witness to testify that someone her age would naturally be experiencing cognitive decline, Brandon said. Samantha was manipulating her at the end. Everyone could see it. The betrayal cut deep, not just the lie, but how it desecrated my grandmother's memory. Evelyn had been sharp until her final days, reading voraciously and completing the New York Times crossword daily. Her occasional forgetfulness about minor things had been normal aging, not dementia. I hired a private investigator who uncovered my father's gambling debts to some concerning individuals. My mother's credit card statements revealed she had opened accounts in my name without my knowledge. Brandon and Rachel had apparently been telling potential investors they owned my house as collateral for business loans. The most heartbreaking betrayal was finding items missing from the house, family heirlooms that had been disappearing slowly. A check of local pawn shops confirmed my suspicion. Lily had been selling them off piece by piece. My grandmother's silver tea service, antique jewelry, and even some rare first edition books from the library were gone. While documenting everything, I made another crucial discovery: my grandmother's hidden journal. Behind a loose brick in the library fireplace, I found a leather-bound book detailing family financial manipulations going back decades. Grandma Evelyn had been aware of my father's gambling, my mother's spending, and their repeated attempts to access her money. The journal explained exactly why she had left everything to me, along with her concerns that the family would try to contest her decision. "Richard has never respected what wasn't his," she had written. "Eleanor sees the house as merely an asset to liquidate. Only Samantha understands that a home holds more than monetary value. It holds our history, our memories, our very souls." The final piece of my preparation came when Benjamin discovered my father had actually attempted to file a forged codicil to the will. The document was dated after my grandmother had already been hospitalized during her final week, with a signature that didn't match her hand. Benjamin's contact at the county records office had flagged it as suspicious, preventing its filing. "They're going to make their move soon," Benjamin warned me. "From what you've told me, they're running out of money and getting desperate. When they do, we'll be ready." We prepared a comprehensive legal response. Documentation of all property taxes I'd paid, records of the improvements and maintenance I'd personally funded, proof of the historical society filings they claimed were missing, and evidence of their various schemes. Most importantly, we filed for restraining orders against each family member based on their documented attempts to defraud me. The orders were prepared but not yet served, waiting for the moment they made their move official. "Let them think they have the upper hand," Benjamin advised. "Sometimes the best defense is to let your opponents believe they're winning until the moment you show your cards." As painful as the preparation was, it gave me a sense of control. Each document I gathered, each recording I saved, was another piece of armor against their betrayal. The house that had been my sanctuary since childhood had become a battleground, but I was prepared to fight for what was rightfully mine. I returned to the living room with a calm I didn't know I possessed. My family sat in tense silence, exchanging nervous glances that turned to confusion when they saw my composed expression. I was carrying a leather portfolio that none of them had seen before. "I've had some time to think about your proposal," I said, settling back into my seat. "And I believe I understand the situation now." "Good," my father said, visibly relieved. "I'm glad you're being reasonable. The developer needs an answer by next week, so if you could start packing dash." "I didn't say I was accepting your terms," I interrupted. "I said I understand the situation. There's a difference." I opened the portfolio and removed 5 sealed envelopes, each bearing a name. "Since we're exchanging legal documents today, I thought it only fair I come prepared as well." One by one, I handed each family member their personalized envelope. The room remained silent as they opened them, confusion turning to shock as they realized what they were reading. My father was the first to react, his face flushing deep red as he shot to his feet. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, waving his eviction notice from the property. "That's a formal notice requiring you to vacate the pool house within 48 hours, I replied calmly. "Similar to what you just gave me, except mine is actually legally binding." "This is ridiculous," my mother sputtered, staring at her own document. "You can't possibly have evidence of dash. Credit card fraud?" I finished for her. "Actually, I do. 6 accounts opened in my name without my consent. The police are very interested in talking to you about that, Mom." Brandon crumpled his paper in his fist. "These allegations are completely dash." "Accurate?" I suggested. "The investors you scammed with false collateral documents showing you owned this house might disagree. They've been very cooperative with the investigation." Rachel's hands trembled. Samantha, you're making a huge mistake. We're family. Family doesn't do what you've done, I replied, my voice finally betraying emotion. And Lily, I turned to my sister who sat pale and silent. The pawn shops keep excellent records. The police have already recovered Grandma's first edition Austen collection. You've been investigating us? My father's voice was incredulous. For 3 months, I confirmed. Ever since I came home to find a realtor measuring my living room for a listing I never authorized. I pulled out my phone and played a recording, Brandon's voice clearly discussing how to challenge Grandma's mental competence, followed by my father planning to submit forged documents. I have dozens more recordings just like this one, I said, stopping the playback. Every conversation where you planned to steal my home, every meeting with that shady lawyer who's already under investigation for fraud, every phone call with the developer who, by the way, has pulled out of your deal after learning about the pending legal issues. The doorbell rang, right on schedule. That would be Benjamin, my attorney, I said, standing to answer it. Benjamin entered carrying a briefcase, his professional demeanor adding gravity to the moment. I assume everyone has received their documents, he asked, looking around the room. This is harassment, my father declared. We'll fight this. I wouldn't recommend that course of action, Mr. Marshall, Benjamin replied. The evidence against each of you is substantial. These notices are actually a courtesy. Samantha has agreed to not press criminal charges if you comply with the terms immediately. Criminal charges? My mother's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. For what? Attempted fraud, conspiracy, credit card fraud, theft of family heirlooms, filing false legal documents, Benjamin listed dispassionately. I could continue, but I think you understand the severity. The room erupted into chaos. My father accused my mother of pushing the scheme too far. Brandon blamed Rachel for the embezzlement evidence. Rachel tearfully claimed she was just following Brandon's instructions. Through it all, Lily sat silent, tears streaming down her face. Enough! I finally shouted, silencing the room. This stops now. You came into my home on my birthday to take everything from me. Did you think I wouldn't fight back? Did you think I was that weak? We just needed money, my father said, his voice suddenly small. The house is worth so much, and you're just one person. It didn't seem fair. Fair. The word felt like acid on my tongue. Was it fair when I loaned you money for your investments that you gambled away? Was it fair when I let Brandon and Rachel live in the pool house rent-free for over a year? Was it fair when I helped pay Lily's student loans? I pulled out one final document from the portfolio. This is a record of every dollar I've given this family over the past 5 years. Over $150,000 in total. Money I earned that you took without any intention of repaying. We're blood, my mother insisted. Family helps family. That's exactly right, I agreed. Family helps family. But you stopped seeing me as family and started seeing me as an obstacle to money. You were willing to destroy Grandma's memory, claiming she was mentally unfit, just to get your hands on this house. I moved to the mantel and picked up a family photo from last Christmas. I wanted to believe in this, I said, looking at our smiling faces. I wanted us to be a real family. But families don't plot against each other. They don't try to steal homes and heirlooms. What do you want from us? Brandon finally asked. I want you out of my house, I answered simply. All of you tonight. The locks will be changed in the morning. Take your personal belongings only. Everything else stays. Where are we supposed to go? Rachel demanded. That's not my problem, I replied. You all had plans for after you evicted me. I suggest you implement them earlier than expected. As the reality of the situation sank in, their reactions transformed from anger to desperation. My father attempted to negotiate, offering to split the house proceeds differently. My mother tried emotional manipulation, bringing up childhood memories and family obligations. Brandon and Rachel pledged to make amends and repay everything. Only Lily spoke with any sincerity. I'm so sorry, Sam, she whispered. I never wanted this to happen. They convinced me you wouldn't really be hurt. Yet you sold Grandma's treasured possessions anyway, I replied, the pain fresh. The things she specifically wanted you to have. Benjamin interrupted the escalating emotions. I suggest everyone begin collecting their belongings. The security company will be arriving shortly to supervise the removal of your items and ensure nothing that belongs to the house is taken. As they reluctantly dispersed to gather their things, the weight of what had just happened began to settle over me. In a single evening, I had effectively cut ties with my entire family. The victory felt hollow, tinged with grief for what could have been. The next few hours unfolded like a surreal dream. Security personnel arrived as promised, positioned themselves throughout the house, and monitored as my family packed their belongings. The home that had been filled with birthday preparations just hours earlier now echoed with bitter accusations and tearful pleas. My father's facade of righteous indignation collapsed as reality set in. He alternated between threatening legal action and offering compromises that grew increasingly desperate. We can work something out, Samantha. Maybe a partial sale? Or a loan against the property. My mother took a different approach, moving from manipulative reminiscing to cold fury when her tactics failed. You think you're better than us now, she hissed while packing her clothes from the guest room. With your fancy clients and design awards? You wouldn't be anywhere without this family. Without us. Brandon and Rachel worked in frantic silence, occasionally casting accusatory glances my way as they loaded boxes into their SUV. They had been living in the pool house so long that it had accumulated years of their possessions, clothes, exercise equipment, the expensive electronics they somehow could afford despite being supposedly broke. The most difficult to watch was Lily. Unlike the others, her remorse seemed genuine. She packed her few belongings quickly, then sat on the front porch steps, her head in her hands. When she finally approached me, her voice was barely audible. I didn't know how far they were planning to go, she said. I thought it was just talk at first. Then it got so real, so fast. She twisted her hands anxiously. But I still went along with it. I still took Grandma's things to pawn shops. I can't blame anyone but myself for that. I wanted to comfort her, to say I understood. But the betrayal was too fresh, the wound too deep. You had choices, Lily. We all did. As they loaded their vehicles, I stood in the foyer watching the family I thought I knew dismantle before my eyes. The carefully maintained bonds of obligation and shared history unraveled completely, revealing the truth beneath, relationships built on convenience and opportunity rather than genuine love. My mother paused at the door for one final attempt. This house is too big for one person anyway. It's wasteful. Your grandmother would be ashamed of your selfishness. Grandma knew exactly what she was doing, I replied, fingering the vintage locket containing her photo that I always wore. She saw all of you clearly, even when I couldn't. By midnight, they were gone. Benjamin and the security team did a final walkthrough to ensure nothing significant had been removed, then departed with promises to check in tomorrow. The locks were changed, security codes reset, and for the first time in years, I was truly alone in my grandmother's house. The silence was deafening. I wandered from room to room, touching furniture, adjusting picture frames, seeking comfort in the familiar surroundings that now felt irrevocably changed. In the kitchen, half-eaten birthday cake still sat on the counter, the cheerful candles a mockery of the day's events. I found myself in my grandmother's study, a room I'd preserved exactly as she left it. Her reading glasses still rested on the antique desk beside a worn copy of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. I sank into her chair and finally allowed the tears to come, not just for tonight's confrontation, but for the years of deception that had preceded it. A memory surfaced of sitting in this very spot as a child while Grandma Evelyn explained why family heirlooms mattered. It's not about the things themselves, Samantha, she had said, showing me a delicate teacup from her mother's collection. It's about the stories they carry. When you hold something your ancestors touched, You're connecting across time." The irony wasn't lost on me that in fighting to preserve her legacy, I had severed my connections to everyone else who shared her blood. The victory felt Pyrrhic, the house suddenly too large and empty around me. Sleep eluded me that night. I moved from room to room like a ghost, replaying conversations and wondering if there had been another way. Could I have seen the signs earlier? Set firmer boundaries? Found a compromise that wouldn't have ended in complete estrangement? Dawn found me curled in the window seat of the master bedroom, watching as the first light illuminated the garden my grandmother had lovingly tended. The roses needed pruning. The herb garden was overgrown. Life continued its relentless forward motion, indifferent to human drama. My phone had been buzzing all night with messages from extended family. Some expressing shock at what I had done to my poor parents, others admitting they'd seen the dysfunction brewing for years. I ignored them all, silencing notifications and focusing instead on the tangible reality of the home I had fought to keep. That first morning of my new reality, I made a pot of tea in my grandmother's silver teapot, one of the few pieces Lily hadn't managed to sell, carried it to the porch, and watched the neighborhood come alive. Children waited for school buses. Neighbors collected newspapers and walked dogs. Normal life continued all around me while mine had been upended completely. Grace appeared at the property line, concern evident on her face. "I saw all the commotion last night," she said, approaching cautiously. "Are you all right, dear?" The simple question nearly undid me. "They tried to take the house," I explained, my voice breaking. "My own family." Grace's expression hardened. "I was afraid of that. Those vultures never appreciated what they had in you." She sat beside me, her weathered hand covering mine. "Family isn't always blood, Samantha. Sometimes it's the people who actually show up when you need them." Her words were the first genuine comfort I'd felt since the confrontation. As we sat together watching the morning unfold, I realized that while I had lost the family I was born into, I wasn't truly alone. There were still people in my life who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide them. That thought sustained me as I began the process of reclaiming my home and my life, one painful step at a time. 1 week after the confrontation, the initial shock had worn off, leaving a dull ache in its place. I returned to work, throwing myself into client projects with an intensity that left little room for dwelling on personal matters. My business became my sanctuary, the one area of my life untouched by family betrayal. The fallout, however, proved more far-reaching than I had anticipated. My phone continued to ring with calls from relatives I barely knew, some condemning my actions, others sharing similar experiences with my parents' financial manipulations. Aunt Martha, my father's sister whom I hadn't seen in years, left a voicemail that brought unexpected tears. "I saw this coming decades ago, Samantha. Richard did the same thing to our parents. You did what I never had the courage to do." Uncle Thomas, my mother's brother, reached out with surprising support. "Your mother has always believed money equals love," he said during our call. "It's why she married your father despite our family's objections. They deserved each other, and you deserve better." These revelations about my parents' past behaviors provided context, but little comfort. The family I thought I knew had never really existed, just an elaborate performance maintained for access to resources. Not all consequences were emotional. The professional impact hit unexpectedly when a potential client canceled our meeting after hearing about your family situation. The small-town grapevine had been working overtime, with my parents apparently telling anyone who would listen that I had cruelly thrown them out of the family home without provocation. Grace proved invaluable during this time, bringing casseroles, checking in daily, and fiercely defending me to gossips at her garden club. "Those people lived off you for years," she declared over tea one afternoon. "Anyone who believes their version doesn't deserve your business anyway." Benjamin called with updates on the legal situation. My parents had consulted 3 different attorneys, all of whom had declined to take their case after reviewing the evidence. Brandon and Rachel had moved to a neighboring state, apparently to escape creditors looking for repayment of business loans. No one had heard from Lily. Despite the validation of my actions, doubts crept in during quiet moments. The house felt different now, larger, emptier, the memories it contained tainted by recent events. I found myself avoiding certain rooms where painful confrontations had occurred, sleeping in the guest room rather than my usual bedroom. During a particularly difficult evening, I found myself in the attic, surrounded by family photo albums and memorabilia. Images of birthday parties, holiday gatherings, and family vacations told the story of a happy, united family that contradicted my current reality. Had it all been a lie? Or had something fundamentally changed over time? The doorbell interrupted my melancholy exploration. Through the peephole, I was shocked to see Lily standing on the porch, shoulders hunched against the evening chill, a small backpack at her feet. I opened the door cautiously. "Lily? What are you doing here?" Her face was pale, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "I didn't know where else to go," she admitted. "I've been sleeping in my car for the past few days." The sister who had helped betray me now stood homeless on my doorstep. Every instinct warned against letting her in, yet I couldn't bring myself to turn her away. "Come inside," I said finally. "But we need to talk." Over mugs of hot chocolate in the kitchen, neutral territory, Lily revealed the aftermath from her perspective. After leaving my house, she had refused to participate in my parents' continued plotting to contest the will. Their anger had turned on her, resulting in her eviction from their temporary apartment. "They're still talking about legal challenges," she confessed. "Dad thinks if they keep pressure on you long enough, you'll give in just to make it stop." She stared into her mug. "I told them they were delusional. That's when Mom said I should leave if I wasn't with the family. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. So they evicted you for not supporting their failed eviction of me," I summarized. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "Karma, I guess." The decision I faced was complicated. Lily had participated in the betrayal, yet she seemed genuinely remorseful. Could I trust her? Should I? "I can't let you stay unconditionally," I said finally. "There would have to be rules. Boundaries. Anything," she agreed quickly. "I'll get a better job, pay rent, whatever you need." "It's not about money," I explained. "It's about trust. You broke that in fundamental ways." We negotiated terms. She would stay in the small third-floor bedroom, contribute to household expenses, continue therapy she had apparently started after the confrontation, and most importantly, have no contact with our parents or Brandon regarding anything to do with the house or my affairs. "And you'll need to help recover the family items you sold," I added. "Whatever can't be found, you'll need to repay over time." Lily agreed to everything, her relief palpable. As I showed her to the third-floor room, as far from my living space as possible while still being in the house, I wondered if I was making another mistake, setting myself up for further betrayal. But Grandma Evelyn's voice seemed to whisper from the walls, "Compassion isn't weakness, Samantha. It's strength to help others even when they've hurt you." In the following weeks, Lily proved surprisingly committed to our agreement. She found a better-paying job at a local bookstore, attended therapy twice weekly, and spent weekends helping me restore the garden that had been neglected during the family drama. One rainy Saturday, while sorting through boxes in the basement, we discovered a cache of my grandmother's journals that had been stored away decades ago. Reading them together provided a new perspective on our family history, patterns of behavior that stretched back generations, financial manipulations that had affected others long before us. "She knew," Lily said, looking up from a journal entry dated 30 years earlier. "Grandma knew exactly what Mom and Dad were capable of. That's why she left everything specifically to you." The basement discovery led to another important development. I decided to renovate the house, starting with the rooms that held the most difficult memories. The formal dining room where the birthday confrontation had occurred became a sun-filled art studio. The pool house was demolished completely, replaced with a gazebo and meditation garden. Each change helped reclaim the space, transforming it from a battleground back into a home. I incorporated elements of my design aesthetic while honoring my grandmother's original vision. The process became a physical manifestation of my emotional healing, preserving what was valuable while making space for something new. As the house transformed, so did my perspective on family. The blood relatives who had betrayed me faded to the periphery of my life, while others stepped into more prominent roles. Grace with her practical wisdom, Benjamin and his unwavering support, colleagues who became friends, and even Lily. Slowly rebuilding our sisterhood on more honest foundations. Family, I was learning, could be chosen rather than merely inherited. The house that had been the center of so much conflict was becoming something new as well, not just my inheritance, but my creation. A home defined by peace rather than obligation. 6 months after the birthday that changed everything, I stood in the center of my transformed home, barely recognizing certain spaces. The formal living room where I'd received the eviction notice was now a bright, airy consultation area for my design clients. The kitchen had been updated with state-of-the-art appliances while preserving Grandma Evelyn's beloved vintage cabinets. Every room reflected both respect for history and openness to new possibilities. The most significant change wasn't physical but philosophical. Using a portion of my now-thriving business profits, I had established the Evelyn Marshall Foundation for Young Designers, providing scholarships and mentorship to talented students without financial resources. The east wing of the house had been converted into studio space, where scholarship recipients could work on projects under professional guidance. My grandmother's legacy now extended beyond our family, touching lives she never knew but would have appreciated. The foundation's first showcase had been covered by local media, bringing positive attention that helped counter the lingering gossip about family drama. Professionally, the temporary setback from lost clients had reversed completely. My story of standing up against family financial abuse had resonated with several wealthy clients who had experienced similar situations. My design business now had a waiting list, allowing me to be selective about projects. Family relationships had settled into new patterns. I had maintained complete separation from my parents and Brandon, despite their initial attempts to re-establish contact through increasingly desperate messages. Their financial situations had apparently worsened, with my father facing potential legal issues related to his gambling debts. I felt sympathy but recognized that re-engaging would only restart unhealthy patterns. Lily had surprised everyone, including herself. After 6 months of consistent therapy, responsible financial behavior, and genuine effort to make amends, she had earned back significant trust. She had recovered several of Grandma's pawned items and was making regular payments toward the value of those that couldn't be found. Our relationship had evolved into something more authentic than the superficial sisterhood of our earlier years. The turning point in my healing process came when I decided to host a housewarming party to celebrate the renovations and officially launch the foundation. The guest list became a defining moment. Former clients, professional colleagues, new friends, and the chosen family that had supported me through the darkest times. Conspicuously absent were my blood relatives, with the exception of Lily and a few distant cousins who had reached out with genuine warmth after the confrontation. Uncle Thomas attended, commenting that it was the first time he'd been in the house without feeling tension in decades. The evening of the housewarming arrived with perfect early autumn weather. Lanterns illuminated the garden. Guests mingled through rooms showcasing both design excellence and personal history, and for the first time since the confrontation, the house felt fully alive again. Grace arrived early, bringing her famous lemon tarts and a small wrapped package. "For your new beginning," she said, pressing it into my hands. Inside was a vintage key on a silver chain, not a key to any actual door, but a symbol that brought immediate tears to my eyes. "It was your grandmother's," Grace explained. "She showed it to me once, said it had been passed down through generations of women in her family. She called it the key to discernment, knowing when to open doors and when to lock them. The gift felt like Grandma Evelyn's blessing on my difficult choices, a connection across time that no family betrayal could sever. As the party flowed around me, I found myself in the library. Now restored with built-in bookshelves housing my grandmother's recovered collection alongside my own. Benjamin joined me, champagne glass in hand. Quite a transformation, he observed, looking around appreciatively. Not just the house. You too. I'm not sure I had a choice, I admitted. It was transform or collapse under the weight of it all. You always had choices, he countered. Many people would have given in to avoid conflict, or sought revenge rather than resolution. You chose the harder path of setting boundaries while remaining true to your values. His observation crystallized something I had been feeling but couldn't articulate. The past 6 months hadn't just been about surviving betrayal, but about discovering my own capacity for resilience. Each difficult decision had strengthened my sense of self, clarifying what I truly valued beyond family expectations or obligations. The foundation of my new life wasn't the physical house, despite its significance. It was the internal framework I had built through painful choices and deliberate healing, the capacity to trust my own judgment, establish healthy boundaries, and create meaningful connections based on mutual respect rather than convenience or biology. Later that evening, as guests began to depart, Lily approached with an envelope. I wasn't sure whether to give you this, she said hesitantly. It might just reopen wounds. Inside was a letter from our mother, apparently delivered to Lily's workplace. I scanned it quickly, noting the familiar pattern of manipulation, expressions of concern about my isolation from family, interspersed with none too subtle inquiries about the house's current value and renovation costs. 6 months earlier, such a letter would have triggered guilt and doubt. Now I could recognize it for what it was, another attempt to bypass my boundaries without addressing the fundamental betrayal that had necessitated them. Thank you for showing me, I told Lily, returning the letter. But I don't need to respond. That's what I thought you'd say, she replied with unexpected relief. I just didn't want to make decisions about your relationships for you. Her respect for my boundaries represented perhaps the most meaningful transformation of all. The possibility that at least one family relationship could be rebuilt on healthier foundations. As the last guests departed, I found myself alone in the garden my grandmother had loved. The autumn air carried the scent of late roses and apple trees heavy with fruit. Stars appeared in the deepening twilight, the same stars Evelyn had shown me as a child, teaching me constellation names and ancient myths. The house behind me stood solid and welcoming, no longer a battleground, but truly mine in every sense. Not just legally owned, but personally claimed, shaped by my choices, filled with my vision while honoring those who came before. The pain of betrayal hadn't disappeared entirely. Such wounds never heal without leaving scars. But the acute anguish had transformed into something more useful, wisdom about human nature, clarity about my own values, and deeper appreciation for genuine connections. I thought about the question Benjamin had asked earlier. What would you tell someone else facing what you faced? The answer came clearly now. Trust your instincts. Set boundaries without apology. Remember that real family, whether related by blood or by choice, supports your growth rather than depleting your resources. And sometimes, returning the favor means responding to betrayal not with vengeance, but with the dignity of self-protection. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice to distance yourself from toxic family members? What helped you find the strength to stand your ground? Share your experience in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to hear more stories about finding your worth and standing up for yourself. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is more valuable than the one we're born into. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps anyone facing similar challenges know they're not alone.